Hey guys, Juti here, and it's time for another episode of Tekken Troubles, and today we're looking at Alisa and her Destroyer stance, better known as her Chainsaw stance, and of course how to deal with it. But first things first, let's take care of some of the misconceptions regarding the stance. What you need to take away for yourself is that when Alisa is in this stance, regardless of whether your attack hits her or she blocks it, she automatically gets kicked out of the stance. That means certain moves are your go-to tools, something like a generic one jab. If your character has a down forward one, use that as well. A crouch jab is also very practical because it goes underneath highs and is 10 frames, and of course something like a generic full crouch 4 which covers a bit more distance. The other thing to take note of is that despite what it looks like, Alisa actually has very limited movement in the stance. Yes, you heard that right. And that is because she doesn't have access to generic stuff like a regular backdash or advanced techniques like forward dash cancel or Korean backdash. Instead, she has to overshoot by doing things like her back flip, which she cannot cancel by the way, or doing her forward leap with the dual boot stance, something I'll cover later on when I'm talking about her approach. If not, she can just do a generic forward movement or a back movement which is extremely sluggish. And on top of that, her sidestep is really nothing to write home about in the stance. However, many people will point out immediately that she has another sidestep out of that stance, which works also kind of like a stance. However, what you need to understand here is that she only has one thing she can do out of that being her one option, which is -13, so make sure to punish it and shut it down each single time. Now, let's look at some of her other stuff out of the stance and how to deal with them. So now let's look at all the other moves out of the chainsaw stance and how to deal with them. The general concept here is the same as dealing with most other stances, and that is if you block the move out of the stance, what that means is that you are at a plus frame advantage and Alisa is at minus, so it's your turn. However, if you get hit, Alisa has extreme plus frame, so it's definitely her turn. However, we have to look at a couple of moves separately, and the first one being forward 1. This is Alisa's fastest move out of the stance, and unlike the other moves, it leaves her at +3 on block. So that means she can spam this back to back. Yes, it is a high, so you can duck it, however it's active for a while, so that means that even if you duck it, you have to get used to the timing before you can retaliate. The other thing is that if you're continuously being pressured by this and you don't have a wall to your back, you can actually backdash away to get away from all of this. The next move we're looking at is forward 1+2 into 1+2. Now, the first section of this move, the first portion of the string, is actually +8 on block. So what will happen is that Alisa players will sometimes just do this back to back in the hopes that you want to retaliate and then finish the string with 1+2 again, which will send you flying. However, this move is likely to whiff, so the second portion of the move is likely to whiff, and even on block it's -53, so launch punish it all the time. Next up is back to 1, which puts Alisa at -3 but puts you into crouch, and how you deal with this, despite the little pushback which is involved, is that you do a full crouch generic 4 which covers the distance, because Alisa of course can't low parry it. Now we look at the two low options, which I actually don't really find that problematic. We'll start off with down 1. This isn't too much of a problem, it's just -12 on block. And then we also have down 2, which is the repeated chainsaw spin, which is -12 on block, and sometimes also has pushback, so you won't maybe be able to always punish it. What you need to understand about these two lows is that they're actually very reactable. Yes, they seem a bit strange, but trust me, go into practice a bit and you can get used to the animation and block them all the time. So normally this would now be the portion where I talk about her dual boot stance, however I haven't forgotten about that. Instead, what I want to showcase to you, which you're seeing running in the background right now, is a couple of strings Alisa can use to get into the chainsaw stance from neutral. And there are a couple of them, however I want to briefly talk about just a few. So the first one being down forward 1-1-2, you see this fairly often. However, what you should keep in mind is that it ends on high, so you can just duck even after the first hit. After you block the first hit, you can duck that and launch punish her. What you also see fairly often is 3-2 for some strange reason. Just punish this and get her out of the stance as quickly as possible. And now a couple of better moves. The one out of full crouch, down, forward, 1+2 into 1+2. This is a good low because it leaves her at +5 on hit. Yes, it may be -11, but the risk actually pays off because she can get her chainsaw game started very well. And then the last one I want to talk about briefly is the one out of boots. So out of a stance into the chainsaw stance, and that's actually quite good because the 1+2 option into chainsaw leaves her at +8. However, the issue with this is that it's very steppable to both sides, something which will now reflect in the dual boot approach. So when Alisa wants to get you from further away in the chainsaw stance, she's going to rely on transitioning into the dual boot stance. And nothing highlights this more than the forward 1+2 option, which covers the whole screen. Yes, you heard that right. And it seems like she has plus frame, so it feels like you just blocked a truck, but in reality you're at neutral, so it's either person's turn. Don't always allow her to take her turn. But the truth about this, with most of her other stuff as well, is that it's extremely linear, so you can just step it to the left or to the right. Doesn't matter if you're sidestepping or side walking, you will go around it. And the same can be said about the 4 option, which you don't see too often. It's a launcher, but on block it's also launchable at -27 and also extremely steppable. Something which is better is her 1 option, which is a high and leaves her at +9 frames, which is very good. So you could duck it if you could see it coming, but the truth is you don't have to play the guessing game, just go around it. With stepping, the only thing which needs special mention, however, is the 3 option, because you're going to see this fairly often. It's a very, very quick low. It is, yes, it is -14 on block, and it is +4 on hit. However, it is also a counter hit launcher, so Alisa players like to use this fairly often. It's also the reason why you see this 90% of the times after they use their rage drive. And the thing about this is that it tracks fairly better than the other moves out of this stance. However, it is still steppable. It needs to be slightly more precise, but it is definitely very, very well steppable. So yeah, that is the dual boot stance approach in a nutshell. Don't be scared of anything. So with that, we've come to the end of my video. Of course, I recommend you go into practice, get used to some of these animations, because it just sometimes feels weird what Alisa is doing, but once you get used to the animations, you can always deal with this stuff. Do not be scared. Of course, you know the drill by now. If you like the video, leave a like. And of course, checking out the Jehuti Gaming channel helps me out a lot. There's a whole bunch of other videos over there. And of course, consider subscribing because that helps me the most. This is your boy Jehuti, and I'll see you on the next one.